there was absolutely no fear or apprehension. From the moment I popped out of my body, going down the tunnel, into the sphere and then into the light again, there was a feeling of overwhelming, unconditional love. I felt so loved by everything and everyone that I've struggled for over 50 years now trying to find the right words in the English language to explain the level and depth of love that I was consumed with. And there are none. Because it really is an overwhelming feeling. And it's a feeling of being loved to the extent that there is no comparison. It's not like, oh, it was really a great feeling of love or a lesser feeling of love. There are no adjectives to describe the unconditional love that I felt because it was all encompassing. My vibrations, my body vibrations, my soul vibrations, the NDE vibrations blended in with the unconditional love and the light, and we became one. So it was so obvious to me that I had gone back home where I came from, and I came from unconditional love. And now I can remember what it was like when I was in three-dimensional space here on Earth, not having unconditional love, but having love of various types, comparing that to the love that I felt in the light would be like if I held up a match and I lit a match, and then right next to me was the sun, and I say, this is the best love I ever had on Earth compared to the whole sun. Well, there is no comparison. They're both heat. One is a little match, and one is the sun of the universe.
I immediately felt this overwhelming sense of unconditional love. Love like I have never felt before. No matter what I had been through in my life, no matter what I had done, it was just complete love for me. I was bathing in it. It was wrapped around me, and it made me feel valued, appreciated, and accepted. The next thing I felt was an overwhelming sense of peace, that everything was okay and that everything was right, that all is well. I was getting a healing. I started to notice all the areas in my soul or in my energetic space where there were wounds or there were holes, and all of those areas were starting to get filled in, and they were getting filled in with love. I was being replenished, and it was the best feeling. It just made me feel like this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be. This is what my soul is all about.
I was in the middle of this brilliant white light and this amazing, pure, unconditional love. And the thing that I felt the most was, I'm home. Whatever worries or cares I might have still been carrying were gone. It's like, I'm home. It's as if I had been working in the mines for 200 years, and I finally came home. I was home. Like a drop, I wasn't separate from it, although I knew who I was. I still had my identity, but it was part of me. I felt like I was like one of those orbs, as Dick said, one of those orbs of light going back to the source. Or like a drop of water going back into the ocean, but that drop still knows who it is. It's part of, but also has its own identity and can remember. I remembered more about who I was, all kinds of different lives I've led, all kinds of things that I'd done. And still I was part of. I could have just merged and blended into that love, because that's what I was made of. There's no judgment there. There is no judgment. None whatsoever. That's the second most important, or one of the most important things I learned. God does not judge us. I was there in the heart of God, which is what all of us are. I had returned to the heart of God, and I knew that I was not judged at all. Because God knows when we're down here on earth, playing in these little human play suits. It's sort of like those things we dress our kids in when it's cold, and they're all bundled up, and they have boots, and they have socks, and they have idiot mittens, and hats, and scarves wrapped around their heads, and they're like, they know that that's what it's like, pretending to be a human, which we all decided we would pretend to do. So, if one of your kids is all dressed up like that, and you say, here, feel this, doesn't that feel interesting? They can't feel it because they got mittens on. So they make mistakes. They think, oh, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, and they might guess about what it is because they can't really feel it because they're muffled. And of course, that's how we are as human beings. We're muffled, and we can hear our guidance, and from inside and from outside, and we can, try to understand what it's trying to tell us, and we can try to act accordingly, but it's all muffled. So we do our best, and sometimes we don't do so well. Some of those things in the 60s especially. But there's no judgment. There's none whatsoever. My relatives were all just happy to see me. They were so proud of me, and I'm like, well, I haven't done anything. They were proud of me. Just getting up every single morning and trying again. Especially on the days when it's been bad. They were so proud of me. What courage it took to do that. What courage it took to be on planet Earth, pretending to be human, pretending to be separate, willingly muffling our connection to all that is, pretending that we're flawed and limited. What courage that takes. They were amazing. And I'm standing there like, well, I've never done anything important. They said, oh, you've done the most important thing that exists. It was wonderful.
I was rescued by the light, taken to the light, and like any good atheist that stands before the light, I immediately knew it was God. My first big question to the light that I perceived as God, and I won't even go into how the light feels because you know it and you've talked about it a lot. It's fantastic. My first question to the light was, why is humanity so dark and doomed? Why was this ever created? At that moment, the light breathed me into it, and suddenly I found myself in a mandala. Is the only thing I can tell you it looked like, an endless mandala of living human souls, of all the human souls that had ever existed. And in that mandala of human souls, I could look into every human soul. And you may not believe this, but I had a look in all of your souls too. All of you were there, every human soul that had ever been. And in that, I could see no evil, no darkness whatsoever. And then I was shown my soul, and there was no darkness, nothing that I suspected. It was not there. It was all an illusion. And in that moment, it was like an atom bomb went off, and everything that I ever knew was obliterated. And then these souls, and it was all of you too, gave me life again. These souls gave my soul life again. And in that, my soul was reborn. I had never received such love in my life as I received in the mandala of human souls with the light. I keep that love alive in my heart forever.
Blank. That's the last moment I remember of my waking consciousness. I emerged I popped into from there, you could say, with no discernible transitional phase. I'm just all of a sudden in this like other world, this other realm. And I'm not sitting, I'm actually standing, and it's like, it feels like heaven. Like what my concept of heaven would be like, meaning it was like really bright and it was all like white everywhere. And the one thing that would make me say that it seemed like I was in heaven is the quality of the whole realm, the whole place I was in was just beaming with love. I felt love, and it was so intense and so penetrating that I just started crying. I sometimes cry as I tell the story because I get to like have a faint memory of how it felt. This is like no worldly or earthly love. This is like the love of the divine. It was so unconditional and so peaceful. And I'm just sitting there being like washed away in this flood of love in this other realm that I somehow just popped into out of the fucking blue. And all of a sudden, before my very own eyes, I see an angel. I know, an angel? Really? Yeah, it was an angel. I shit you not, an angel. And it came over to me. And this angel looked like what I would think an angel looked like. It had wings. It had like this robe. It looked like, what is it? Non-gender. I don't know what the word is, but not really a male or a female. Just like a glorious angelic being came up to me, and it like wrapped me in its wings, and it gave me this hug. And in that moment, the love I was feeling, that I thought was the most intense love I've ever felt in my entire life, exploded times a million. I just felt like I remembered that I was from there, or from a place like that I am a divine fragment of love, that is my true nature, that what I was experiencing in my life is a temporary illusion and just an experience that I chose to have. All these, like, didn't come in the form of like remembering things. I all of a sudden just knew that. I just knew that. I knew what I was. I knew where I was. I knew this angel was real.
I tell you, at one point when I was with the light, I asked the light, I said, why are humans so dark and doomed? I was given a glimpse into every human soul. I was given a glimpse, and there was no blackness at all. There was no evil whatsoever. And at that moment, I fell in love with humanity. There's always much more good going on than evil. It's just that our media, we're still coming out of survival. We haven't transcended survival yet, so we're constantly on the lookout for what we call evil. Just not too long ago, I was in an elevator, and a woman got on with this T-shirt that said, "The meek are getting ready." You can't put an actual time on this. That would be impossible to do. But I can tell you, it's so close now, it's in the blinking of a cosmic eye. And I got to see what's called the mass potential of humanity. And the mass potential of humanity is looking into the heart of humans. And there's goodness in every human heart there ever has been. Once you go to the light, you are completely purified of any disease, any darkness, any what you might call evilness.
I was drawn into a tunnel that, to me, the words I can describe it are almost an opalescent blue, beautiful, beautiful. And at the end of the tunnel was a pinpoint of light, and I couldn't do anything but go toward it. And so I went toward this light, and as I got to this light, it became bigger and brighter, almost like looking into the sun, but it wasn't painful to look into this light. And the light was in front of me, and then the light was around me, and then I was in the light, and then I knew I was the light. That there, as a drop of water in the ocean is not separate, the light and I were made of the same substance. And I was home. It was, bliss doesn't come close to the word, but I knew in that moment that I was forgiven for anything I thought was unforgivable. I was loved beyond all measure, in a way that I'd never been loved before, and I wanted to stay there.
He had a bald head. He had white hair over the sides and around the back. He had the most beautiful face I have ever seen on any human being. It encompassed all of wisdom, all of compassion, all of love and understanding. I knew the very second I looked at him that anything he told me would be truth. I had no clue who he was. Nothing inside me thought it was Jesus, God, Peter, Paul. He was nameless, but he was a spiritual authority of some sort who was going to be someone I could completely believe without a second thought. His robe was purple. And I must tell you, we didn't talk with words. I only had to have the germ of what I was going to say, and he received it immediately. Didn't even have to think out the individual words. And the first thing I said to him was, I know what has happened. I understand. I know that I have died. And he said, again, without words, he transmitted to me mentally, I guess, that's correct. Yes, yes. But you will not be staying here because it isn't time for you to be here yet. And I said, oh, well, there's something I want to ask you. I've encountered nothing but beauty, love that I didn't even know existed. Everything since I crossed over to this place has been perfect and beautiful and totally loving. What about my sins? And I was only 23. I hadn't accumulated a lot, but I knew about love thy neighbor and don't tell lies and that kind of thing, and always figured, I guess you have to pay for them. I remember my first feeling of having broken a commandment. I fell off my bicycle. And from somewhere, I don't know where, because I never heard this at home, I said, Jesus, as I fell. And I lay there under my bike and thought, I've taken the Lord's name in vain, and I waited for whatever thunder was going to come down upon me, and nothing did. And finally I got up and thought, oh, I guess it doesn't apply to kids, because I was only about 7. So I had a concept of sin, and I said to him, what about my sins? And he said to me, there are no sins, not the way you think of them on earth. He said, the only thing that matters here is what you think. And he asked me a question. He said, what is in your heart? And in some way that I cannot ever understand or describe, I was enabled for a few seconds to look into my soul, I guess, the deepest part of me. They say the heart is the gateway to the soul. I think that's where I went. I saw what the core of me was, and it was love. It was perfect love. It was the same thing that I had been immersed in with the light. That was the core of me. And I knew it wasn't just the core of me. It was the core of human beings. It was the way in which we are created in the image of God. That's the part. We are that piece of God ourselves. That is who we really are. And I remember thinking, of course. I used to know that. How did I ever forget that?
That's what I felt like. I felt like I was sugar daddy. And I felt like I was sugar. And I was stirred into this infinite bowl of light water. And although I was still Andy, I remember being Andy. Although I was still Andy, I was now the light. And every other piece of the light there was the light. And it was fantastic. And it was so fun because the light is really very humorous. It's a fun place to be. It's kind of like McDonald's on steroids. It's a fun place.